as it looks like Costa is Mardu and Harry Corvese, Sultai, both these players sitting at 8-1.
Yeah, both you guys on full 3-color decks here. And we'll get this one underway. Sultai, I'm very interested to see here. This is one of the draft archetypes that really we didn't see play out in Sealed as much. How much actual self-milling can you do? We'll see that on Corvese's side.
Harry's got himself a Blossoming Sands to start things off, so he's up to 21. We'll see exactly how aggressive Costa's deck is. He's got a Mardu Skull Hunter, no raid trigger there, but he wants to get to the board early, it seems. He does want to give the beatdowns. You imagine a Sultai deck is a bit more controlling. He's got 6 forests, 3 islands, and 2 swamps, and then a whole bunch of dual lands, as Harry will play a swamp before passing the turn back over to Costa. Costa in for 2, and now he will trigger the raid on his Mardu Horde Chief. So as far as starts go, a pretty good one.
Yeah, Costa played the Skull Hunter so that he could get this raid trigger. He's onto the board pretty quickly. It looks like he only has 2 colors of his mana. If you look at his deck for highlights, one thing that he has, and I'm sure Corvese knows about now, is he has a full trio of Mardu charms.
As in 3?
As in 3 Mardu charms.
Well then.
You see one of them in his hand. No red mana just yet, but as soon as Costa gets red mana, I mean, I have to imagine Costa played some number of Mardu charms early on.
The Hooded Hydra for Corvese is killed. That's a beating. Costa, you saw Costa use the combat trick +1 and +0 to get that thing off of the table.
Yeah, Defiant Strike's pretty interesting. A lot of the times it doesn't change the outcome of a combat. +1, +0 is a really small amount, but there Costa was able to get a huge coup with it by taking out Hooded Hydra.
And we've seen tricks like this before that are +1, +0, and first strike, like a Guided Strikes of the world. But this one, not as good, does cantrip, and it is a 1-mana trick, and that's how he was able to beat the Hooded Hydra in combat. So I imagine that's one of Corvese's big payoff cards. And it is now in the graveyard. We saw exactly how powerful that could be for Tom Ross last round. Corvese's 4th turn here. You can see Costa's hand. He does have a Mardu Charm at the ready, just no red mana at this point. So Corvese's going to cast, it looks like, Rakshas's Secret.
Yeah, Rakshas's Secret. So Patrick Sullivan and I were talking about this yesterday. There's a certain number of cards here that mill you and don't alter the board state. So your Taigam Schemings, your Scout the Borders, your Rakshas's Secret, or your Bitter Revelation. It's hard to play these, especially against a deck like Mardu, but you probably need some of them to make your deck function correctly. You see here, he gets the Mardu Hateblade and the Mardu Charm, so those are 2 pretty good cards, but it's going to cost him a lot of life points. At least 6 damage is going to be swinging back on Costa's side. Yeah,
6 damage, and this is going to be an unmorph very quickly. That's going to be more than 6, my friend. Let's make it 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 points of damage. Costa is kind of taking, I think, a route that you like a lot, which is just beat down.
2 colors. If people are playing tap lands, you can just hit them with 5/3s.
He does have that 3rd color for his Mardu deck, of course, because he does have 3 Mardu Charms, but there are 3 mountains and then 2 Nomad Outposts. And there's a Bloodfell Caves as well, but his Red Splash is minor.
Yeah, and this is how if I want to try to aggro people out, this is the way I want to do it. I don't want to play any curve filler in the 3rd card. I want my curve to be 2 colors and then have my power cards be in the 3rd color. And Costa has done that. His red cards are, as you said, 3 Mardu Charm, a Mardu Rough Rider, and then 1 War Shrieker. That one he's probably not hugely happy about.
It's not often we see the face-up Dragon Eye Savants, but here it is, because it needs to block along with a Morph here for Corvese. So it's time to get some blocking going.
I love that guy face-up. Look at it. He's going to block the 5/3 and then live to talk about it.
That's true. Let's see what Corvese wants to block here with his Morph. And he's going to try to block there. So 2 damage is going to come across. It was a Pine Walker that's going to bite the dust there for Corvese. Very, very powerful Morph, but no time for that. Costa does finally find a red mana. Will play a Bloodfell Caves and gain a life. He just needs to push through these last 4 points of damage. Corvese's goal is to, of course, not let him do that.
Yeah, and here's where you see these late game cards from Sultai. Maybe he gets to resolve a big Delve spell here. He has binned 5 cards now this game. He doesn't have any copies of something like Shambling Attendants. That's, I think, one of the core cards to this strategy. However, we will see what he can make here. He will get 1 good Delve off. Maybe even a dead drop would be worth it here. He could cast 1.
See what this is going to be. It's going to go with the Treasure Cruise. There's your 1 big Delve card.
Yeah, I don't think it's the preferred one right now just because of how low his life total is, but Treasure Cruise can only be so bad.
Take a look at some of the cards in Corvese's deck. He does have a copy of Anafenza in his deck. He also has 2 copies of Ice Feather Aven as well. So the power level of his deck is pretty high. Set Adrift as well. 2 copies of Monastery Flock. He just needs to stay alive, which was some of those cards allow him to do.
Well, after the Treasure Cruise, he had a debilitating injury for the Mardu Horde Chief. So right now, he has Costa covered. And Costa knows time is ticking, and this is going to be lethal. It's going to be dead drop on Corvese that kills the Savants, and Krumar Bondkin should swing for exactly 5, and that's lethal.
That will do it. Matt Costa moves on to 9-1 with his Mardu deck, defeating Harry Corvese. Well, it actually looks like we're shuffling up for a third game, so I take that back. It looks like maybe the first game took a while. So they're going to the sideboard. We'll make sure that we do have the correct numbers here, because I don't think Harry would be shuffling for fun. So it looks like maybe that was game number 2, and we'll be heading to game number 3 in just a moment here. So we do apologize for the mishap there. What that means is that Harry won a very long and drawn-out first game.
The longer the game goes, the better it is for Sultai. It is the late game archetype of the 5 different clans here in Khans of Tarkir Limited.
So for these players, TikTok does go the clock. We are underneath 13 minutes. And it looks like we have that adjusted, so 17 minutes here. They may have had extension due to a move here in the feature match area. So time is appropriate on the screen there for you. 17 minutes to finish this third game. Should be plenty of time. For Costa, he wants to do exactly what he did in that last game, which is to give the beatdowns. For Corvese, he does not want to die. He's got plenty of defensive tools. Again, we saw a Dragon's Eye Savant face up. He's got a Force Away as a bounce spell, 2 copies of Monastery Flock. He's got a Set Adrift. We saw him cast a Treasure Cruise before dying, a Dead Drop, a debilitating injury. He's got some nice cards in his deck. 2 Archer's Parapet as well. He just needs to stay alive, and then he can turn the corner and win the game.
Yeah, those Archer's Parapets are going to be huge in this matchup. And you saw some late game, like you said, Hooded Hydra, Pine Walker. He was so far behind in this game that he actually had to play those cards face down as morphs, and they both traded away or just got killed. Ideally, Archer's Parapet would let him bridge the gap to those cards so that he can play them at full value. And once he does, I think those will be difficult cards for Costa to deal with. His deck's not very well positioned to answer either of them. Mardu Charm only deals 4 damage, and that's Costa's main kill spell.
Well, game number 3 will be underway here shortly for you guys. Again, we are in round number 10 of 15 here in Grand Prix Orlando. If you are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Matthias Hunt, Patrick Sullivan, along with Andrew Schrott and Nick Miller over in the sideboard. SCG Live bringing you all the coverage of this Grand Prix 1 week before Pro Tour Khans of Tarkir here in Honolulu. I know all the teams are out there doing battle. Matt Costa, a member of Channel Fireball Pantheon, he's doing battle here this week, and unfortunately for him, not qualified for Pro Tour Khans of Tarkir. He's looking to get back onto the Pro Tour, though, and he's off to a good start.
Yeah, aggressive keep here by him. Just 2 lands, and I believe they are both white. Well, he does have
to,
a lot of morphs. So.
You get to draw a card every turn. So.
Yeah, all right. So it's fine. It's fine that they're all black cards.
It's one of the rules of the game. You get to draw a card every turn. So. Actually, he gets to start off with one of his best lands.
Swamp.
Duh, this is why you keep. I mean, he needed the swamp to make so that he could make this attack. But this is a fortunate draw there for Costa.
Archer's Parapet's still going to be a problem for him here.
Absolutely.
Corvese needs follow-up, however, so we'll see what he has for that. But right now, things are pretty good on Corvese's side.
Mardu Hateblade is a pretty nice card as Corvese is going to play a morph. Again, a black mana to give it Death Touch, very similar to a card like a Typhoid Rat.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of people are like, hey, this is worse than Typhoid Rats. It's almost the same card. You never actually have to pay the black. The threat of paying the black makes it the same card as Typhoid Rats.
We can't forget, too, that it's a warrior, so it does get some bonuses from some of the cards in this format as well.
It's a warrior. It triggers raid really nicely. This guy's a solid inclusion in most Mardu decks.
It's a morph there for Costa. He will pass the turn back. This game is a lot slower than the previous one, so I imagine if you're Corvese, you're pretty happy about this. Corvese is going to cast a copy of Scout the Borders. Turn over some cards here. You can see a Set Adrift, a Dismal Backwater, and a Fenza, Dragon's Eye, Savants, and then a Death Frenzy, the cards that Harry is looking at. Again, you reveal with Scout the Borders. You may put a creature or land card from among them into your hand. The rest go to the bin. So some really good cards are actually going to go to the bin there for Corvese, but Scout the Borders is a pretty nice card in the Sultai deck, of course.
Costa's got to be glad to know that Death Frenzy was probably a one-of in Carey's deck, and it's not going to be drawn this game. Yeah. However, you can only be so happy when your opponent just picked up an Anafenza.
Here's the attack. Morphs are going to look to trade off, or at least that's what Harry would like to see happen.
One thing you should know is that of the morphs in the set, if I attack my morph into yours and there's 4 mana up, there isn't a morph where you can just unmorph your guy and kill mine. You have to have a Feat of Resistance or some other sort of combat trick to pull that off.
Costa going to play Assault Road Patrol before passing the turn back, so the 2/5 is joining the party now. Corvese at a very high life total. This is not anything like we saw in the last game. Now here is a dead drop from Harry. So that is going to kill Costa's 2 creatures. 6 cards, it looks like, are going to be removed from the graveyard. +4, of course, is 10, so that's a beautiful turn there for Harry. And Dead Drop is a great card in the Sultai deck.
Yeah, and this is what I wanted to see out of Sultai. How do you mill yourself to get these cards to work? You know, cards like Scout the Borders, pretty much all the self-mill cards have a pretty big investment to them, but that investment certainly pays off. Harry did have to take damage for a turn, but was able to clear the board the very next turn.
And Harry's pretty healthy right now. Take a look at that life total. It's 19 with the Parapet back on defense. And you said right at the beginning that Parapet's going to be a problem, and you are definitely correct about that. That thing can just hold down the fort 0-5 and slowly chip away at the opponent.
Matt, Costa does not have a way to deal damage here. The remaining cards in his hand he has are Defiant Strike and Murderous Cut. All right, good cards indeed. Good cards, at least he has the Murderous Cut for the Anafenza in Harry's hand. But it's a pair of Archer's Parapets right now, and Costa doesn't have a creature. He is a few cards away from dealing damage.
And you saw Debilitating Injury take down the Morph, which was a War Behemoth. This is a swarm of Blood Flies, so the flyer here isn't so bad. Can work its way through the Parapet.
No, this is a great draw for Costa, especially because he has that Murderous Cut. When he hits the Anafenza with Murderous Cut, this is going to be a 3/3 flyer. And it's going to be pretty good.
Let's see what Corvese wants to do on this turn. He will cast the Anafenza. You have to imagine that Costa's just going to try to kill that right away. Don't want that thing to stay on the table. Depends on what he draws, of course.
As much as he wants to kill it, he would also like to just get the counter on his Blood Flies.
Defiant Strike will allow him to cantrip and give his Blood Flies +1/+0 for the attack that I imagine is coming in just a moment. See a single black mana. It is time for a Murderous Cut. And it looks like he's going to delve most of his graveyard.
It's his only delve card. No reason not to play it on single black, even if he has extra mana.
So that's going to take care of that. Of course, the trigger on the Blood Flies, that'll grow a little bit larger. And now here's an attack for 4, not 3, because of the Defiant Strike.
Oh. Yeah, Costa does have Dead Drop out of the board, which he did cast last game. Not main decking it, but here it does seem a pretty good card. I mean, especially when your opponent's playing a lot of Archer's Parapets.
There's an Unyielding Kumar, and now here is Rashaka's Secret. So Harry will turn over a couple of cards. Hooded Hydra goes away. That's a tough one to let go. Now Harry will play a Morph and pass the turn back. Both players, no cards in their hand. Let's see what they can draw.
So Rakshasa's Secret's interesting. In the self-mill, you know, it's always hard to see your best cards get milled. I think in draft, that's largely irrelevant. Games are fast. It's about efficiency and your deck's engine. I don't think you have to worry about milling yourself out of threats too badly. In sealed, however, I think there's actually a chance that sometimes you mill all your ways to win.
Dismal Backorder comes off the top for Corvese. He's up to 13. Costa will attack for 3 in the air. Monastery Flock says, I don't care.
I love the number of 05s Harry has in play. Big fan.
3 of them right now. And now Harry gets to go to work on Costa's life total a little bit with the Parapet. So while they hold down the fort, they can also work on Costa's life total.
Shoot some arrows across every turn. For the low price of 4 mana, you can 2 him every turn.
Hey, whatever it takes. Get that damage through. Harry's got the air and the ground locked up right now. Costa really can't do very much. He's got to draw a good card as Corvese is going to play a Morph. Costa will quickly untap and draw a card. Again, he does have 3 Mardu Charms to kind of work his way out of this situation. He hasn't drawn one just yet, though. You see him play a Swamp. He also has, the Ancestor's just going to tick on up. It's going to become a 2/6. It's got a long way to go before it can get through those Parapets,
yep,
though.
That was my thought, exactly.
Corvese will draw a card. Again, Mystery Morph in play. 2 Archer's Parapets, bunch of lands out there, and the Monastery Flock.
I think we're going for a cruise here.
Oh, boy. Let's peel 3, shall we? That might be the best draw. You've seen Costa run his hands through his hair. Can't be happy to see that from Corvese.
Yo, 2 mana, draw 3. Yeah, it's going to be good.
I've seen worse turns, that's for sure. Corvese going to tap some mana here. Let's see what he's going to add to the table. Looks like it is Batachroma.
Gurmag Swiftwing.
In the house.
It doesn't do too much right here.
Don't talk about the bat like that.
I mean,
it does everything.
He's got a lot of abilities.
Here's an attack from Costa.
Interesting bluff here, if it is a bluff, because this is not a free attack. He takes the damage on the way back by making it. So because that's true, Harry has to think twice before blocking with the flock.
And the flock is what's holding the ground down right now. Or holding the air down, excuse me. And he says, I will block. All right, fair enough.
And that was the worry here is I didn't think it was a bluff. And there you go, debilitating injury post-combat takes care of the flock.
And that also grows the swarm of bloodflies into a 4-4. You also saw the Outlast activation on the Disowned Ancestor, so that becomes a 3-7 now. Corvese will play a swamp. Now, one thing that Harry has not done is he has not done much with that morph, but now he goes a reach in.
Whatever that morph is, he sure has enough mana to flip it face up.
I was trying to figure out what that was. Costa says no blocks, I believe, and he shrugs his shoulders and says, all right, what is this going to be? Corvese, 4 and 5 mana. It is a Pine Walker. All right, so 5 damage plus 1 to the air is going to be 6. Let's not forget, too, there's 2 black mana out there for the parapets, so he does have enough mana to activate both of those.
Shooting arrows every turn. Costa has Corvese on a 4-turn clock with the Bloodflies, but Corvese's got Costa on 5 turns with the parapets. He only needs to sneak a little bit of damage in here to win the fight.
And to be fair, you've also got that Disowned Ancestor back on defense for the Pine Walker, so Corvese is going to gain a life off the Dismal Backwater trigger. Here is maybe an attack in the air. Yes, sir. In for 1. The race is certainly on here. See who can peel better in this situation. As Costa will untap his 4-4 flyer. He's at 7. Mardu Charm is his draw.
Right now, I believe Corvese wins this race.
I believe that you're correct, though things do get a little bit hairy because if a creature dies, the swarm of bloodflies grows a little bit larger. Mardu Charm is going to take care of the bat.
Now Harry does not win the race.
Up to a 5-5. It's a 2-turn clock, excuse me. Corvese will activate both of those. It's 5-5 as Harry will draw a card. See if he finds what he's looking for.
Needs a way to stop these bloodflies.
That's a morph.
All right, does he have a Sagu Archer or anything?
He has another Monastery Flock.
All right, that'll play.
And that'll work just fine. It'll at least buy him a turn as he does play a Forest. And he will pass the turn back. And the Pine Walker can't attack because they can't get through the Disowned Ancestor.
Even the Monastery Flock is actually not enough here to win the race. He can only put Costa to 1.
Oh, okay.
Better. Ice Feather Aven. So much better. And now that was the top deck Harry needed.
Let's see what Costa draws for the turn. That was one heck of a top deck. Swarm of Bloodflies looks like it's going to come back on the table.
Yeah, Costa draws Nomad Outpost.
Mm-hmm.
And he is going to need a top deck here.
Shooting those arrows from the parapet is how Corvese is going to try to get it done. Costa was 1 attack step away, but a timely top deck there from Corvese puts him right back in the game. And now you can see Matt is a little bit concerned. What kind of top decks does he have to get himself out of this? We're going to find out as we go. Trying to figure out if he can make any good attacks here, but you can see the ground is all sorts of gummed up. He just has to play the Nomad Outpost, pass the turn back. Corvese is going to activate both of those parapets. Costa's down to 3.
I don't believe Costa has a top deck here. We'll see. Maybe he can prove us wrong, but I think these arrows are going to shoot him to death.
Corvese draws a card for the turn. He's at 5, Costa at 3. The Ice Feather Raven was a big one, as oftentimes it is. One of the best uncommons in this set. Corvese gripping that card tightly. Going to take a look at Costa's graveyard. Wants to figure out, how do I lose this game? Given that they have played a very long match. Both players have seen a lot of cards from each other. And Harry says, I'm actually going to attack for 2. Costa's got a block now. And now, there is the long shot. Pass the turn back. Costa draws a card. It's a copy of Mardu Charm.
Mardu Charm, a great card, but Costa needs to kill Corvese this turn. There's 4 damage on the table in those parapets. Costa doesn't have a way to kill them.
A lot of players are a very large fan of Archer's Parapet, and you can see exactly why. In these defensive decks, not only does it buy you a lot of time as it's done this game, but it can also win you the game. Harry Corvese is going to win this match over Matthew Costa, 2-1. He and his Sultai deck with a small splash Rana Fenza take care of Costa and his Mardu deck. A timely top deck of the Ice Feather Aven pushes Harry to 9-1.